Good. We're all good. So her name, I'm very honored to say with us, is Wambui Ippolito, and she is a fabulous garden designer and horticulturist, and she'll be joining us just shortly. And I see her here now, so she is a dream. She's very patient with us today.
That's
So
fine.
we had a couple of technology glitches. I was saying, I think because of the Wi-Fi, it's so windy, so some of the connection is there. But you can see me now,
I can see you. We're side by
and
side.
we're recording, which is wonderful. So I
Great.
was saying that when we couldn't be outside, she was going to be outside in her garden, right? But
Yes, well, it's not in any way, shape, or form a landscape designer's garden. It is more what grows, grows.
what grows, but it's so windy here. So my tablescape where I do it here today is for Flag Day. So I got my flag pin and my
Mhm.
Swarovski, but lots of.
And beautiful hydrangeas.
Oh, thank you for saying that. So we have hydrangea from the garden. We have some roses. I have some little roses that I just picked from this morning to put on. So it's all about the red, white, and blues. And we got some firecrackers and things that I'll post later on some other things. But I always say that for Ladies Who Lunch conversations, we really want to explore the women that we interview. They're very, very special and important to me especially, but to the audience and viewers. And so it's more than just the little background or the bio, which I'm going to read about you just to put things in context. But I'm also a writer and a garden designer. I came about all this through the plants. So these are the books that I've written: The Art of the Garnish, and contributed to the Gotham book, the Savoring Gotham, and then the Hamptons and Long Island Homegrown Cookbook. But Savoring Gotham is where I wrote about the Ladies Who Lunch conversation. So these very powerful, important women who, ran about the business of New York City and other cities, especially with the cultural background. And for those, many, many people know Wambui, and she's just the type of person that you want to get to know. I was explaining earlier that when we were at the Philadelphia Flower Show, looking at her very peaceful, serene garden, a woman who works with her, Leslie, said, I just knew I wanted to work with her as soon as I heard of her or met her. But for those of you who don't know Wambui, she is a graduate of the New York School of Professional Horticulture. And we have a lot in common there because I taught there for a brief time in communications. And the director, Charles Yurgolevich, is a very, very dear friend of mine. And a frequent house guest. But Wambui's also worked in Martha Stewart and David Letterman's gardens and owns her own landscape design company. And last year, Veranda Magazine named Wambui one of 11 revolutionary female landscape designers and architects you should know. And you're also an author, so we have to learn more about that. But right now, I just say a formal welcome to you. As I said, it's a little early for cocktails, but we have a mimosa. So cheers, Wambui. Thank you so much for joining.
Cheers. And thank you so much, Leon. Thank you for having me. Yes, Charles is a wonderful man. I want to mention him here. One of the greatest directors I think the School of Professional Horticulture will ever have.
I totally agree. I know he's recently gone on to the next chapter. We don't like to say retired, but gone on to
Yes.
the next chapter. But I just don't think they'll ever find a replacement. I mean, he has such a passion for horticulture and the students. He just cares about you so much.
Much. He was
Yeah.
wonderful when I was there.
So I wanted to ask, I was going to say that you're a storyteller, and I think you tell great stories with your gardens,
Well, thank you.
but also as a female and immigrant and so on. So, Ladies Who Lunch conversations, we like to give that little intimate inside view, and a mother, how you balance family, life, work. So maybe you
Mhm.
can tell us a little bit first how you came to this country.
So I came here because my mother was a diplomat. My mother had worked for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for many years, and so she was a diplomat, and she was posted to Washington D.C. And we moved here when I was 14. So I went to high school in Washington. I lived a very, you know, every child of a diplomat knows what I say when I say you live the diplomatic life. So
Yes.
all your friends are like you, they're all from someplace else. you usually end up going to a school, where everybody's parents are either connected to their embassy or their high commission, or they work for the World Bank, or they work for the UN. So, and many of our parents move through these organizations. So that was the life that I grew up living
What
in.
was what is your country? Where did you come
Kenya. I was born in
from?
Kenya.
Kenya. So beautiful. I was telling, if people don't follow, I'll put up Wambui's Instagram account, but earlier in this year, she went back to visit with her grandmother, who is 96, which is really fantastic.
Yes. And my sister, who moved, my only and older sister, who moved back a couple of years ago, I spent a lot of time with her. I also spent time at home, at our home, because Kenya is still very much home to me. It's my home.
Yeah.
Even though I live here, married to an American, that is home. And,
I bet.
it's nice to be back post COVID, see,
Is
and
your, how do, so your husband is American? Does he work in the business also?
oh no, my husband does his own thing. He is a regular Staten Islander.
I hear you have some famous guests over there now with the Kardashians and so on.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Listen.
Well, you've worked for some famous peoples, but first I want to ask how you got into horticulture. What drew you to that? Was it your background in Kenya or here? What drew you to plants?
Well, that's an interesting question, because many people here have asked me, well, what drew you to plants? And I'm like, how could I not have been? It was not even being drawn to plants. It's what I come from, you know. My family has always, we're farmers, we are people of the land. The land is central to who we are. It has always been that way. I grew up feeling very old, very connected to this landscape that is the oldest landscape on the planet, which is the Rift Valley, in the Great Rift Valley in East Africa, where humanity comes from. And that's where all my forebears have always been, and the fight during colonialism was a fight for our land. So that is what I come from. And my mother is and was a wonderful gardener. She always has had very beautiful gardens. Going back home in February when I went to Kenya and I saw the garden, at the house where I grew up, and seeing how mature it is and how much it has evolved was such a beautiful thing, because I remember when I was little, going and buying plants with my mom, coming back home, planting them, and then seeing what they have become, 20, 30 years later. This is what I come from. So I wasn't really drawn to plants when I came here, or drawn to horticulture. It was just the next phase. I really just wanted to learn about ornamental horticulture in the American style, because I already knew what I do. I mean, I've done this work all my life.
Did you learn from your elders there? I worked with my grandfather. I thought it was like buried treasure. I put that in the preface of my Hamptons and Long Island homegrown cookbook. Is like you're digging for the potatoes, and it feels like treasure. But
Exactly. I did that with my grandma at the farm. And with my mom, it was more the, planting flowers, beautiful flowers and beautiful ferns. And, so I got both sides. With my grandmother, it was the farming, growing food to eat. And with my mother, ornamental horticulture. And also at home, my mother let me have my own little garden where I would,
that's very nice.
vegetables.
So then when you had this pursuit to study, what made you choose the New York Botanical Garden to study? And did you have another career first, or was this always your career?
No, I had another career before this. I wanted to be like my mother, so I went into international development and international,
Very nice.
and I worked in that. But then when I had my daughter, we moved back to to New York, and I realized that I really didn't want to go back into the corporate world. I didn't want to go back into an office. And we lived at the time right up the street from the Snug Harbor Botanical Garden here on Staten Island, and it's a very beautiful garden. And we would go there and we would walk my daughter there. So I was actually scheming on how I could get a job there at the botanical garden. And I went and I talked to the director, and he said, well, we really don't have jobs right now, but, I need volunteers. And I said, well, sure thing, I'll volunteer. So I told my husband, and I started to volunteer. And it just turns out that the director of horticulture there, Greg Lord, was a graduate of this School of Professional Horticulture from years back. And so he told me, well, this is something that you might want to do. So I applied. I met Charles. I met everybody at NYBG. I was accepted. And I wanted to go there because it is the best school for this. I really think that the New York Botanical Garden School of Professional Horticulture is the best school for ornamental horticulture
I
and
agree.
making the connections that you need to move forward in a
I
good way
totally
as a
agree.
professional.
You know, teaching there, I would say that I'm like I say, I'm no bigger. There's no better cheerleader for the school than me because you all are, the students there. Not only is it hands-on, but also the, what do you call it, the book study of it, the history and so on. But you are the next leaders for horticulture and botanical gardens in the future. I mean, that's where you're coming from. So this is, the cream of the crop.
Yes, and that's where you make the connections that will serve you for the rest of your life. And
Yes,
because you not only make them with the New York Botanical Garden,
yes.
you
The
make them with
net, the
all
network.
these other institutions. Yeah.
Yes. I think the networking is so important. I was saying to Wambui, as I say to a lot of you, is that, ideas have agency and we need to, be around people and, foment these ideas and creativity. So you were it was like karma that he suggested the school and that there you are.
Exactly.
Besides the learning that you got there, where do you think the school so-called took you?
It opened up many portals for me to learn. They have a beautiful library there, and I was able to spend a lot of time accessing that library. I spoke a lot with Karen Dobman, who at the time was the head of exhibitions there, and I learned a lot from her. I learned about how to work in a glass house.
Mhm.
There's so many portals within that institution that once you go through them, it's a whole other world of learning. So I really am so thankful that I went to the New York Botanical Garden School of Professional Horticulture. I
I
cannot even quantify what it means in terms of my profession. I had the background, I had the grounding, I had the connection with the land, and so this was just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, really. And the introduction to people, like tell us how, I know you do your, work study program at different gardens that, the garden introduces you to, like Martha Stewart or David Letterman. Did you choose them or how did that come about? Everyone always likes the start.
Once again, Charles Yurgalevich. You know how they have the antique show at the New York Botanical Garden.
Yes.
At the time when we were students, we had to work during the antique show. Carrying
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
around.
Oh, yeah.
And
I know. And
yeah.
Martha comes and she buys a lot of
Yes,
things there.
exactly. So Charles introduced me to Martha, and then she started talking about what she was doing, at the garden. I remember at the time she was going to be planting very many trees in one of the forests there, and she just casually said, "Oh, you should come and work." And the next day, I sent my application in. I mean, I locked it down immediately.
Good for you.
Yeah,
I
so
I saw one of my neighbors here attended it, but she just had a huge tag sale where a lot of I don't know if it's things from the garden and antique show because they're quite costly, but she had a lot of things that she was selling off there. But we went with Metro Hort, which is actually where I should explain to the guests. That is where I was introduced to you through Metro Hort
oh
at
really?
Rama this year. You
Oh,
were
when I gave the talk at Blancarama.
exactly one of the featured speakers. And
Mhm.
I was just mesmerized. And I said, Charles, this woman is incredible. And, of
Oh,
course, he was so proud of you. So it was great.
like a dad.
And like a father, absolutely. And it's Father's Day tomorrow, too. So we'll celebrate, cheers to Charles and Father's Day and all that.
Mhm.
But that with Metro Hort, that's where I got to go to Martha's. We went to Martha's Bedford Garden. Is that where you worked?
Yes, in Bedford. Yeah, so I was in there working very hard and learning a lot. I learned so much from. I cannot tell you how much I learned at Martha's
What
because
are
she.
maybe like a couple of things that you learned from Martha? And I'm sure you taught her as well.
Well, I learned that I have an eye. That was the most important thing. I remember her very casually mentioning to me once, the eye matters. It was about some planter that had been done wrong. And I realized, coming out of there, I realized that I have an eye. I can paint a garden in my mind, and I see it in my mind, and I can recreate it, and people can feel what I'm trying to put across. I realized that was the most important thing. Um, and I also realized that when you garden, it is, you garden with intention. You know,
Yes,
this
yes.
is not just about, landscaping, going to Home Depot and buying three shrubs and, two roses and sticking them in a
It's
parking
so
lot.
true. I mean, I
It's
often
intention.
say to people in my own garden design is that not to disparage a place or whatever, but I say it's not like doing up a gas station, where they have plants and they're maybe uniform and they tried. But I think gardens tell a story also. So, like,
They, they tell a story, and the story is evolving. And you install a garden knowing that it will go on after you're gone.
mm,
So what is the story going to be 30, 40 years from now? And that's how I garden with intention, that when you first see it, you must feel something, and you must be able to locate yourself. So if I create a garden, anybody on this planet should be able to walk into that space and feel like they belong, you know
absolutely.
because that is what nature is. It is all embracing. She doesn't choose some of us to be special and others not to be. So if you are creating a garden, anybody from Afghanistan to Congo to Australia to Alaska, they should be able to walk into your garden and feel like they belong. And if you do that, if you garden with intention and people feel that, then you're
Mhm.
successful. And that's what I do, or at least what I try to do.
Do you have an opinion or a feeling on native plants versus exotic? I mean, you come from a place that has such, for us, are exotic plants, but do you try to bring in, East African plants, or do you mainly deal with native northeastern plants? Or I know there's a lot of talk about this in horticultural circles, but what's your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that we also have to understand that we human beings are part of nature, and we move from place to place and bring plants with us all the time.
Mm.
So that's part of that natural process as well. So, in as much as we love native plants, and I do love native plants, I wish I worked only with native plants. There are plants that are here that will never leave. They will never leave this location. So my my model is, if I can use 60 or 80% native plants and then use the other 40 or 20 as just icing or as sprinkling, like the non-natives as sprinkling, then I'm doing okay.
That's a good rule of thumb. I like that, 80/20 rule. I try to tell my clients too, is like, don't beat yourself up over it. If you want to be like total, you can't be 100% native, but we can all strive for that, mainly for the pollinators, besides, the look to it.
Yeah,
But
because it's too severe. I mean, if you think about being, even just as a human being, if you say, it's like the people who go on these really drastic, uh, culinary models where I'm just going to eat, what my ancestors ate, 500 years ago.
right,
It's
right.
insane.
It is.
This is evolution. The world is evolving,
It
and
is.
gardening evolves. But we can also be conscious of our surroundings and of the landscapes in which we work, and of introducing, things that may end up being invasive. I
Yeah.
think if you just keep a model where you say, okay, 60% or 80% is going to be native, and then the rest I can just use as sprinkling, then you give yourself, some sort of wide berth and comfort, in your
That's
gardening.
a very good rule of thumb. Now, working in horticulture, I always call this the silly season, because there's just
Everybody's
not
going crazy.
there's not enough hours in the day to be able to do everything. So I have to ask you, how do you balance, and then we'll get into the flower show, but how do you balance your, profession, your job, your family, and doing other things like this? How do you balance it all? What do you have, some yoga or meditation that you do?
Yes, I meditate every day. Oh my goodness, I would be a nervous wreck if I didn't meditate. But I also have a very good model on how to work. For instance, we had an installation yesterday, and I knew Leslie was going to be here. Leslie is my
Oh,
still in Philadelphia. I knew it was going to be hot. I knew the crew would start to flag at by lunchtime, and I knew I had to get my daughter from school at 2:45 because my husband couldn't do it. So I knew we're gonna push this job. We're gonna get it done so that by 11 o'clock we're cleaning up and
yeah.
everybody can leave, because I know they're not going to be able to do anything after 12 in the heat. So it's all about time management. It's all about prioritizing and just working according to that schedule that I put out there. You just have to work that way, especially in this season. I knew I had to get my daughter at 2:45. When I went in the morning, I told everybody, this is a quick day. I have to go get her from school. You have to be out of here by 12. Irrigation have to come in because they want to go home too. They don't want to be working here after 2 p.m. in the sun. And the clients want to be able to come in the evening and enjoy their garden. So we need to get this done. And when people see that you are moving really fast and you have everything itemized and you have the schedule when this is going in and when this is getting done, then you can move through and get back home on time to pick up your daughter from school, which is what I did. And I was able to get her a smoothie and pick her up with a smoothie. So she was very happy.
Plus, you're teaching your
So it's
daughter.
all time management,
It's all time, but it's like being a good role model, I think, for her,
Exactly. Yeah,
to
I think,
see. Now,
yeah, for my
how did you first get involved with the Philadelphia, the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society for the flower show? Because last year you were an award winner. I know you spoke about that at Plantorama, but seeing you again this year, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about why did you take that on and how did you get involved?
Well, they asked me to do it last year because my very dear friend Abra Lee, who you probably had on the show, I think,
Yes.
told them about me. They had asked her if she wanted to design, and she said, why don't you call Wambui? So she was doing other things at the time. So that's how I got involved. And then this year, I did it again because I had already won last year. And this year, I really wanted to focus on challenging myself with the garden. I wanted to not do anything I did last year, not use any of the elements that I did last year, not rely on anything, that helped me win last year. But I still wanted to create a feeling. I wanted people to come in and immediately connect with a feeling in the garden. And I know that I was very successful because everybody who visited that garden was able to say, I feel this way. This is what I feel. And it was exactly what I had tried to introduce into the garden. So I guess I'm trying to say that I'm one of those gardeners who, like I said, it's intention. It's about intention. It's about evolution, and it's about challenging myself. It's so easy to go by slab and, put a water feature in and put, 3 rhododendrons or 5 hydrangeas, and make them symmetrical and move on. But then what about that sense of people moving through a landscape? That's what I want. I want people to be able to feel, I have entered this landscape and I am moving through this landscape, and this is what it is making me feel. So, Leslie keeps writing down, who's still in Philadelphia, she keeps taking notes of what people say about the garden. And everything they say about the garden and everything they said to me about the garden when I was there is exactly what we intended for people to feel when they moved through that space. So I think we were very successful.
I think so too. We stopped obviously a couple times and took many, many pictures of it, but I think to your, bigger macro point is that you design gardens made with love. Otherwise, they're soulless. And I think that,
Exactly.
right? And
And
so,
people feel that. People feel that
yeah,
when it's soulless.
yes, it's like
People
if you
feel.
if you cook just with ingredients, but people put love into their gardens, or they tell the story with it. And I think you ace that. It's people just were drawn to it. They wanted to sit in those, I call them anthropomorphic chairs. They look like people, those chairs.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they do. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
And
people,
and and we all want to feel the same. I'm sorry for cutting you off, but we all want to feel the same. You know, people want to feel good. People want to feel safe. People want to feel included.
mm,
And if you create a space that allows everybody to feel that way, then you are successful. I mean, I've been to gardens where I knew not to walk on that grass or cross, that line or touch that tree because they were very, it was like a combative space. Like I knew this space does not want me here. And
oh,
I don't want to create that. I know that every human being, wherever they are, they want to feel included. And
yes.
so you create a space that they walk into, with their stroller and their grandma in her chair, and.
Yeah, you respect the elders too, but it has that immersive, sort of embrace, and yet it was so serene. It was very hot when we were there, and I think just the idea of being close to the plants, that you could see everyone was just, let me just walk through this.
Yeah.
They were
One
really,
of the nicest comments I got was from a very dear lady called Karen Dobman, who was the head of exhibitions at NYBG. And she told me, she said, I loved your garden. It's the kind of space where I just wanted to sit and ponder.
oh, nice,
I just wanted to sit and ponder about life.
very
And
nice.
that was the best. So
I think we
thank you,
need
Karen,
that.
if you ever read this.
We need that sense of
If you ever see this.
all the more now these days. Where do you see yourself going in the future? Like, what is, if you're looking 5 years out, or for, what do you see with your challenges? I think you're an artist, just hearing you talk about it, like you're always looking for a challenge, or
Well, you have to challenge yourself because then you evolve. And I know I've always known when things aren't working for me. So, well, currently I'm writing a book, which I should be turning in March to my editors, March of next year. So
what's
that's
the
a
book?
challenge.
Oh, that's good. What's the book?
It's a garden book. It's about American immigrants and how we have all affected the landscape.
Mm,
And when I say immigrants, I'm talking about everybody whose ancestors came from somewhere else onto
which is
this
pretty much
land. So I think it's going to everybody. I talk about Italian immigrants. I talk about Romanians. Everybody who's come
that's
through, who is here, and
That's
it's it's
like you
it's
could
it's
combine
personal.
your mother and you, like your embassy and diplomacy work with your horticulture. That seems like a sure winner.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I've talked about this before, and people like the stories that I tell. I'm gonna be talking again at in Martha's Vineyard in July, and people like the story, and they wanted it. In fact, this came right after or right before the Metro Hort talk that I gave about the garden at BBG at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. So that's the book I'm writing. I'm also hopefully going to be designing two gardens. I'm not going to say where, but I'll let people know in time, and they will be open to the public. Hopefully, in the next 2 years, I see myself doing that work. I
Mm.
also would like to do more renovating of the garden in Nairobi that I posted a little bit of when I was back home on
Mhm.
Instagram. And I just want to keep creating really beautiful spaces and evolving and allowing people to understand that it's the connection with the land that's important. You know, like I said, you can create a space by bringing in five hydrangeas and, two cornuscusa and, whatever, and some stonework.
Right.
But that's not the connection with the land. You have to be connected to the landscape. You have to feel
Mhm.
a part of the landscape, because when you do that, then you begin to heal. So I would like to create landscapes that people feel a connection to, that they can sit in and ponder about life, like Karen Dogman said.
Oh, we just need that. Remember, we so need it. Do you have a favorite flower or plant?
You know, when I was back home a couple of months ago, all the agapanthus were in bloom. Agapanthus is native to Kenya and all the way from East Africa, Kenya, all the way down to South Africa. So I hadn't really worked with agapanthus here, but when I saw it at home, it was so beautiful, you know, because it's pretty much wild. It just, I mean,
Exactly.
it's ornamentalized now in gardens and home, but just seeing it all in bloom, and it's such a, it's so Kenyan and it's so much a part of my life, you know. So I've started working with it again. So I would say that I really love agapanthus, and I love grasses. I love sedges. I love to see the wind blow through them. Here in America, I really like the river birch. I love birch trees. I think they're the prettiest trees in the world. I wish we had them in Kenya. I would, you know, I would plant them everywhere. But you know, I love river birches. What about you? What's your favorite
Well,
plant or
first I
flower?
have to comment is that my dear father, who died in 2008, but he loved birch trees also.
Oh,
So it's really, I just love that you love that. So I love you even more, but because I worship him. But with climate chaos the way it is, we can't grow those true betula, the real white, ones.
yeah,
So
the
yeah,
Betula Jackmontia. Yeah.
yes.
Hmm.
So now more river birch, and I have a dear client who he loves them also, so I plant them. So that's that. And I do use agapanthus when I had it one time in a huge urn. I mean, it's so dramatic, and I didn't know that it was native to Kenya. So
Yeah.
for that, I'm learning something more here. For my favorite, I have to say, is a peony or
Oh yeah.
ranunculus or hydrangea. I love our native viburnums.
Hmm.
I love our echinacea. I love. I could go on and on because
Yeah. Oh, I love Echinacea pallida. Pallida is so dainty and you know.
I have this cultivar in our grillscape garden that I designed a couple years ago. It's razzmatazz, and it's really big and red, and it has a nice fragrance, which is really, really fun.
That's an Echinacea razzmatazz.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I
really,
should
really,
check that
really
out.
nice.
Yeah,
So you
I'm not too into reds. But I'll check it out.
yeah, well, I do red, white, and blues, down
Yeah.
there. I have I love Joe Pye weed, and I have a lot of that,
Oh yes, yes.
and then a hardy hibiscus, and
I love verbascum too. I use that a
yeah.
lot in this garden.
Oh
Oh,
wow,
and the other thing about the gardens that I have, I always name the gardens because I
me
think
too.
they
Oh
are living beings. You know, so my winning garden was Etheria. You know, that's the one that cleaned up and took all the
yeah.
awards. And she really was Etheria, and everybody was drawn to her. And this one this year was Air, AER, because I wanted that breath, you know, and
Yes.
people felt that. People really. So, like I said, I was successful. So
I do that too. I love it.
name them, yeah,
I named the
because
garden rooms, like the St. Francis one or the
yes,
water garden. It gives it that personality, I think, and you can relate to it more. So
yeah, and then you can talk to them. You can call her. You can say, hey. Etheria, what do you want me to do? Or, hey, Air, what do you know? What is the message you are trying to tell the people?
yes, it
And
it does
then I flow with that.
help you.
Yeah.
Do you
And I
have?
know it sounds hokey. I'm sorry for cutting you off, Leanne, but I know it sounds hokey, but it's true. That is what I do.
I totally 100% in simpatico. I believe it. You can't just put the plant out there and whatever, but when it talks to you, like you say, and you just commune with it, you're
Mm-hmm.
part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I was going to ask you, what's your favorite public garden? Or
Oh,
top three, maybe it's hard to pick.
top three. Chanticleer, of course, is beautiful. I really loved when Christine Schleiter, God rest her soul, was at the New York Botanical Garden and she was in charge of the outdoor gardens.
Mhm.
She did incredible work at the New York Botanical Garden. So it wasn't so much a garden, but Christine's work that was astounding. I would just go and stand and just look at the plantas she did. I would look at the new plants she introduced at the outdoor garden at the home gardening center at New York Botanical Garden. I would stand there and look at the peonies. I remember when she had the cotton cultivars that she planted there. I spent so much time just looking at what she did. She was fantastic. And she had also worked for Martha. I remember she used to do the garden spots for the Martha Stewart show back in the day when Martha Stewart had the show. And so I would say Chanticleer, and then all the work that Kristen Schleiter did at the New York Botanical Garden, and of course my mom. Did you say public gardens?
You could have your own garden, yeah, for whatever your mom.
My mom, like everything my mom has ever done, has always been so dear to me because she's such an organic gardener. She has no plan. She doesn't sit down and draw anything. You know, she'll just buy something and stick it in somewhere, and it all works. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
and
Yeah.
now so many
Was
years later, when I would see her work, her gardens, and how they've evolved, I'm amazed at how beautiful they are.
was that your garden in Washington D.C. or back
No, I'm talking about the one, the gardens in Kenya. In
Kenya?
DC, we didn't really do much just because everybody was so busy. My mom
Yeah,
was busy at the embassy. We were in high school, playing sports and
yeah, understood for sure.
yeah. I mean, you can imagine four kids in high school and I think one was in elementary school. Everybody, one's playing softball, one's running track, one's doing this. So,
Yeah, that's family life at home, right? Everyone's got their interest. Do you
yeah.
have a favorite cocktail or garden to glass?
I like the Aperol Spritz.
Oh, you do.
Yes, and I like a gin and tonic. A gin and tonic, but I don't even have time to enjoy so, drinking. So, I mean, I like anything. I like shandy. I like anything. I would say anything spritzy. I like
That sounds good. And
anything girly.
oh, girly, I love that. That's like a spritzy too.
I
Um,
like girly drinks.
I like the anything with champagne, the Bellinis,
Yes,
things
exactly.
like that. But I love Aperol. I used to cover food and drink for the Examiner and for my blog, and you get invited. The Aperol put on some fabulous, fabulous events. If you like Campari, there's a really good one I'll
Oh
recommend.
yes, Campari. Oh, my mom used to love Camparis when we were
Yeah.
little. She always had the Camparis at the house, and
Now there's a family-owned one in Colorado called Leopold Brothers. It's all natural, and they
Mhm.
use that red that's in the Campari was originally, I'll just say, Beetlejuice. It was
Oh,
the
it
red,
was.
yeah, from the Beatles. And then
Wow.
they took it out because Americans got rather squeamish about drinking that. But the Leopold brothers use the Beetlejuice, I'll just say.
Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
in there, but it's very, very tasty. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah.
So I can't believe this, but it's really, we've even gone past our time, but I could
Oh,
keep
that's fine.
talking to you because you are so inspiring. I love your visions for the future and your intentional garden design and your connection to elders and nature. I'll just, ask for any last thoughts, but also what rejuvenates you or what keeps your energy at the,
What keeps me centered is meditation. Meditation and the knowledge, which thankfully I always had and have always had, that I am very much part of this landscape. That the land, that nature and I are not separate. That we are one and the same. And I am just a unit of nature. And so the work that I do with this gardening work, which I never thought that I would do. I thought I was going to be like my mother, doing the work that she does. But I guess I ended up being like her because I worked in international development and then became um, a gardener full time.
I
I
think
think
so.
what keeps me centered is that knowledge that everything that I am doing is an expression of nature at her best. And people, those who need to connect with her will connect with her through that work that I do. So that pushes me forward
I
and keeps
see.
me centered.
I will end with this in saying that in so many ways you're honoring your mother, because I think you are an ambassador, but through your gardens.
Yes,
So
thank you.
you are bringing peace and harmony with that.
Thank you. And my mother's very proud of me, so that's a good thing.
Yes, yes. Well, it's an honor to have been introduced to you and to talk to you in this conversation, Wambui. I'm just so grateful. So
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful too.
thank you. Thank
And
you.
thank you to Charles for being that bond.
Yes.
And
I
the New
love
York Botanical Garden.
Bye bye.
Thank you so much, Leanne. Thank you.
Thank you.